Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Since Kevin isn't a big fan of public speaking, he wants to get done as quickly as possible, but I would like to keep him up here as long as possible. So we'll meet somewhere in between. My name is Tom Barnico. I'm the head of training for Tri-City Area Officials Association. Just before anyone asks, there is a sign-in sheet that's going around. Make sure that you sign it. If it doesn't make it in front of you, we'll have it up here at the end of the meeting tonight for you to sign in and get credit for being here. Just so that everyone knows, I am recording this for later posting on the website. I'm not really sure how it's going to go. So tonight is kind of my test dummy, and if it works out, I'm going to try to record each of the other 3 in-person meetings that we will have. But like I said, I'm going to see how tonight goes, and if Kevin doesn't break it, we know we're in a good spot. Just a reminder, we do have another meeting this week. It is Wednesday night at 6 p.m. at Stanley Sterling High School. We're trying to split up the locations a little bit this year to try to give everyone an opportunity to attend the meetings. I'm sorry, it's at the gym. It is at Stanley Sterling High School's gym. Yes. Yep. Thank you, Bill. Then we have 2 meetings next week. One is at Freeland with Brian Morley. One is online. Okay. And then the week after, we have another online meeting, and then our final meeting at Garden. Okay. So with that being said, what we like to do is get everything kick-started by introducing yourself so that everyone in the room can become familiar. We've got some brand new officials in the room, some officials who've been officiating for years but are new to the association. So if you just want to give your name, where you're from, and how long you've been officiating. Again, we're just trying to match names and faces here. So I will get started over here and just kind of go around the room. I told you.
JJ Maxwell Collin, 25.
Joe Freeman, Bay City, 28.
Bill James, Bay City, 37.
Saginaw, 35 years.
Joe Rodriguez, 3 years.
Mr. Shelton, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm John Shelton.
Bruce?
Hi guys, Bruce Moore, President of the Association. This will be my 24th season officiating basketball.
Let's take care of the back row.
Yeah, go ahead, guys. Yeah.
Jim Clark, Saginaw, 20 years. Dan McIntyre, Saginaw, 15 years.
Okay.
Kevin Brampton, Midland, 6 years.
Yeah.
Ron Leader, that year. Ryan Alexander, 5 years.
John Carrillo, listener, 9 years.
Ron Clark, Beaverton, 3 years.
Jennifer Clark, Beaverton, first year.
Yeah.
Beaverton, 22 years. James Bob, Saginaw, 6 years.
Brad Crampton, Midland, 39 years. Ron Leahy, Bay City, this is my 29th year.
Zach Ivey, Midland, 18 years. Tony Garcia, Jr., 7 years.
Henry Velasquez, Saginaw, 27 years.
Steve Velasquez, Bay City, 4 years. Tom Velasquez, Bay City, 11 years.
Tommy Leonard, Greenland, 30 years.
Al Robinson, Saginaw, 14 years.
Jim Wood, Saginaw, 20. Jeff Doan, beautiful Bay City, 15 years.
James Zipra, Bay City, 5 years. Mike Steincross, Gladwin, 46 years.
Billy Keating went on there.
Oh, yeah, Billy went on. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Rob, Bay City, 20 years.
Walker Bay City, 20.
Tony Curtis, Bigfoot, 27 years. Marty Kravitz, Bay City, 15.
Christian Makeries, 20 years. Brent Shoemaker, 15 years. Margaret Charles, Mingo, 4 years. Samuel C. Gilbert, first year.
Awesome. Had a couple of guys join us in the back there. You guys want to introduce yourself?
Vince Barlow, Saginaw, Bears Barlow, Saginaw, 2 years.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much for introducing yourself. As you can see, we come from a lot of different places with a lot of different years of experience officiating. I'm sure some of you do multiple sports. Some of you are still involved with volleyball. Some of you are still involved with football. So we appreciate that you have carved out some time in your schedule to be here with us tonight. As I mentioned before, we do have some new officials. We have officials who have officiated in other states that are joining us now here in the state of Michigan, which we're very excited about as well. Scott, any housekeeping stuff? Good to go? Okay. Keep your arbiter up to date. Okay. Other than that, like I said, before I turn it over to Kevin, just a reminder, 6 o'clock, Standish Sterling High School gym on Wednesday evening. Other than that, Kevin Sinicki, one of our more seasoned officials, one of our most highly rated officials that we have in the organization, many trips down to the Breslin and to state semis and finals and whatnot. So with that being said, Kevin, it's all yours.
Thanks, Tom. Bruce, you got anything you want to say before we kick this off?
I do not, other than, we have the association Bobcats here. If anybody's interested, the $10 is a fundraiser to go for our community support events. So like Wyatt and
One last announcement, if anybody needs to use the restrooms out the back doors, either to the right or to the left, and head south. And they'll be on the right or left side, depending which way you go. If you're going out that way, they're going to be on the right side. If you're going that way, they're going to be on the left side. So if anybody needs those. Thanks for everybody coming. Let's get this started. I don't know how long this is going to last. Hopefully sooner rather than later. So Tom this is our agenda for tonight. So it doesn't look too bad. The agenda was put together by Tom Barnacle, so I'm just following orders. So what's new for this year? Coming from the MHSAA, rules meeting requirements. So all you folks that do football, you've already done the prerequisite. Not have had prerequisite. Okay, so if you're just doing basketball, you're going to have to do both online rules tests. If you have already done a sport prior to football, volleyball, then you only have to do the basketball section of the online rules test. Okay, tournament exams. We get 2 cracks at the written test, which came out, I believe, was published on Monday. And if anybody was out there prior to that, you might have found it already posted out on the MHSA website prior to Monday, but the official email came out on Monday. Oh, let me back up. So if you are wanting to, let's go back to the rules meeting requirements. So you're going to have to do the dual rule meet. There's 2 tests that you have to take care of, the online rules test or meeting. Is that a question, Jeff? Oh, all right. So you have to do both parts, and if you've already done a sport, you only have to do the sport-specific exam. If you are planning to do high school sports, these online rules meetings are a requirement. If you do not plan to do high school sports, you can bypass this section of it. I would not recommend it. I would strongly recommend that you still do the online rules meetings. What else did I miss in there? We do have deadlines for the rules meetings to be completed, which I believe is January 5th. Everything has to be completed, and I'll get into that a little bit more here a little later in the presentation. If you are found to be working improperly, $25 fine from the MHSAA. Does anybody got anything to add to that? How they're tracking this? Bruce, Scott, Tom?
How they're tracking people that are working that shouldn't be working?
Yeah, and implementing the $25 penalty for working high school games without taking them. Bruce?
Yeah, I went to the association meeting this summer, and it's a big deal for all involved, not only the school liability, but our liability officials. Not work any HSA contest without being a registered member of the HSA. We're trying to do a very good job. Tom O'Binius is our association secretary. He's all over it, making sure our roster matches up with the register. Scott, his assignment team are very in tune with that. The biggest thing is that if in the unlikely event something was to go horribly wrong during that game, there's a lot of personal liability at stake, and the liability really ultimately lands on the school district, which is bad. So don't work unregistered. If you see a fellow official and you know they're unregistered for whatever reason, I would call Scott. Don't work a game with an unregistered official.
Bruce, my question though is this $25 penalty that they are talking about, I think, isn't this pertaining just if you're working a high school basketball game and you have not met the requirements of the online rules meeting?
I'm not sure. I was focused on.
Yeah, so I guess I'm not sure about that. I was taking this as $25 penalty for not doing the online rules meeting and still doing high school basketball games. I'm on the same page with Bruce. We all need to be registered, and working as a non-registered official causes problems not only for yourself, but everybody else you're working for. I have that in here. So, okay, because I'm really not sure how this $25 penalty that they're talking about is actually working into the mix. I want you to be aware of it though. It's out there. There's some uncertainty as to how they're going to track that. All right, tournament exams, as I said, tournament exams, if you want to do postseason basketball, you are going to need to do your exams as well. We get 2 cracks at it. In the past, it was either a pass-fail one-time attempt. Now they're giving you the opportunity. If you fail it the first time, you can come back and take it a second time. There's nothing wrong with getting a group of guys together or going over the test and digging into it and getting into the rules book. That's the whole purpose of that exam. So I strongly encourage you to get into the rule book, take that exam. If nothing else, it gets the brain cells moving again and thinking about basketball. Okay. Postseason availability. If you plan to work postseason tournaments, you have to opt in this year to be eligible for postseason. If you do nothing on the website, on MHSAA's website, if you do nothing, you will be marked unavailable. So very important that we go in, if you're planning on doing postseason tournaments, if you qualify for it and you want to work it, very important you go in and you mark yourself available and mark the dates that you're available to work. Okay. The arbiter.
Kevin, you know if there's gonna be a little leeway with that? I mean, obviously, that's 3.5 months from now. They're just a check mark to say we're available to assign us.
Again, I have it later in the presentation, but I think everything is due by January 5th. I think January 5th is the deadline and everything needs to be completed. Okay. I guess the reason for your question?
I just, you know, so I've never done anything but districts, but so if I qualify for regionals this year, how do you say I'm available for what dates, not knowing if you're going to get an assignment, not get an assignment? That, I mean, from that standpoint.
Well, I think it's what.
That's where
My perception of this whole thing is, so when we come to postseason, right, MHSA hands out all these district assignments. And then all of a sudden, once the assignments are handed out, what happens? Don't. You know, and the MHSA, they get dumped on down there in Lansing. And so I think this is kind of a reverse psychology, if you will. I think they're trying to get you to, number one, yes, I want to work it. So you need to make yourself available. Number one. Number two, if you have trips planned, if you know you're going to wherever, Florida, Phoenix, wherever that may be, right? I think they're trying to get you to be thinking about that so that, hey, I'm going to be gone during this time frame. I need to mark that out. I'm not available for this week or these 10 days or whatever it is, so that they're not assigning those games out to you. And then you're turning around and, you know, and if you don't mark it out and you get assigned, I got to believe that they're not going to be real happy, especially with the fact that you're making yourself available. You've gone in, you marked it as available, and then you turn around and, hey, I can't work. You know what I mean?
And that makes sense.
So, the arbiter account, going in and blocking your dates on arbiter is going to do nothing for you when it comes to postseason schedule. They don't even look at the arbiter. Everything is going to be based on what you mark yourself as available for postseason. Brent Rice gave us heads up on this for probably the last, 2 years, 3 years, that the rating systems were going to change. They have now fully implemented the change of the rating systems, and the numbers have been flipped. So 1 is below standard, 5 is superior. They are going to take your ratings, and keep in mind that your ratings are based over a 3-year average. And they are going to take the middle 90% of your ratings, meaning they're going to take the top 5% and they're going to throw those away. They're going to take the bottom 5% and they're going to throw those away. So they are only working within the middle 90% of your ratings. Keep in mind that teams can, if you have, I don't know, Bay City Western, I'll use Bay City Western as an example because we're going to have lots of examples and I'll just use them since they're hosting us tonight. But if you have Bay City Western girls varsity on your schedule 5 times, shame on Scott if that's the case, but if that happens, they have the right to give you a rating for each and every one of those games. And each and every one of those games will be counted as one of your ratings. And again, depending where you fall, where those ratings fall, if they fall within the bottom 5 or the top 5, it really doesn't matter. Again, they're bringing it back and they're doing it within the middle 90% is what you're going to be rated on over a 3-year period. What did I miss? Anything? Oh, there's no challenge to the rating system. So you get into I don't know, you start your night off wrong with a coach and you know you got a 5 coming and the next day, a 1 now. Thank you, Joe. You know you got a 1 coming for that night. There's no calling the state and asking Brent Rice to remove it. The way the system's set up, the bottom 5 are going to take care of themselves. The top 5 are going to take care of themselves. And again, you're going to be rated on that middle 90%. Is that a question?
Before you get all this information.
I'm right here, Scott.
He's high.
I'm just,
He's sleeping.
Make this easier. Can you go to your MHSAA personal page? Can you do that for me?
from the, yeah,
That way we can let everyone know if they have any questions on where to get all this information
Yeah,
done.
for sure.
Oh, you want to go get it?
Yeah.
or, yeah, Kevin could probably. Kevin's probably got better ratings to show off anyway.
I'm not looking for ratings. I just want everyone to.
Ooh, this may be a problem.
Boy.
Hey, Scott. I have a question.
Yes, sir, Jim.
I was on the website this afternoon and noticed that there are rating cards similar to the football position cards with slots for 1, 2, or 3 officials, the game, sub-varsity, varsity. Are you expecting us to use those this year?
I didn't know that they're available. Is that new to you? You see that for the first time today?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, to be determined. Because that's the first time hearing of it, so.
I can log in, Kev. I know mine pretty well.
Because mine is.
You don't know?
Saved. I don't know. Not at the moment. I have to think about it.
Oh, maybe I don't.
And I do not- I mean,
Oh, you're just gonna screw it up.
Focus spells.
You're gonna have to.
Wait, stop.
I know. mine.
we can be over by the time we get this.
Hey, there you go, drive.
That's the same answer as my luggage.
All right, so let me go back. So you log in, you're gonna update your availability and conflicts for postseason for basketball. So we're gonna go here to towards the top right, my MHSAA. We're gonna slide down to official services. Bingo. So here we have everything at our disposal that we need to make sure we're taking care of everything that was on the previous screen that Kevin had pulled up. So here are your availability and conflicts. Select the sport that we're talking about, and here's girls basketball. Are you available, not available? So that's where we take care of that information. And then if you go back as well, I believe, yeah, very easy. Here's where you put your schedule in. Now to John's point, John, where did you find this information?
Under sports specific.
Under, go to officials, Scott. Yep, there you go. Now go to sports specific content on the left-hand side.
Hey, Scott, So the question is, what region schedule? Yeah, it depends on how far you like that. So I think that the association is technically registered in Saginaw.
Yeah.
Which is 4. You prefer to work 7 during postseason, I would work 7. I would also, I mean, to do it manually, I would work 4 and 7, you know what I mean? But I think you can, I would offer that we put a region that you not only work most of the schedule.
A lot of questions any of you have about information I put your schedules in, etc. I mean, it's all here under the sport specific content. So I encourage everyone to peruse
I
this.
think it's further down.
Brad, John.
What are you looking for?
John says that there's a ratings card like for football and for basketball now. Is that what you're saying, John?
Yes.
Right there, at the bottom, at the very bottom.
Right here, right here. This is the first time I'm seeing this.
I can tell you that I have used that many times already. Started last year, late in the season.
Really? I've never seen that before.
No, it was out there already last year. I used that going into, especially into the postseason tournament last year. I knew who I was working with. I would have that card filled out before I even arrived at the school. No stickers, no nothing. And I printed out 2 copies, 3 copies for postseason, and I would hand them off to each bookkeeper, the official book, if there were, you know, for postseason, sometimes we have to issue 3, you know, for the official book, and then team A and team B. Everybody sign? So I have used it. I found it to be very, very beneficial, and I did like it.
Did you just print off a record paper or did you use a paper card?
No, I just printed out. This is, if I remember correctly, I think this is fillable. So you can fill it out right here.
It's like putting your stickers in the book.
You know, varsity. Then you just go find the official's ID number. You can look up the official ID number and then print it, huh? What? I've spelled that many times in my life already.
Whatever way you feel is easiest to put your name and number in the book. I mean, it's just another option.
Yes, yes. All right, where were we? That's everything for that. Any questions on this before I vacate it? Scott?
I wanted to sit on the rating system, and I know obviously ratings are important for many reasons. We look at postseason consideration, but I encourage everyone when they hit the floor, we're not refereeing for ratings, we're refereeing for the right reasons. Make sure nobody gets hurt, fair play for all. So I know ratings is such a big hot button issue with us as officials, like I said, the whole season, but I really encourage you to wrap your head around the fact that with ratings, don't let the fact of bad sportsmanship from coaches, spectators, fans slide. Okay, let's make sure we're doing our job, when we're out there, and if there's something that gets our attention that's outside the lines of the crowd, let's do our due diligence. So that's my takeaway with ratings, my 2 cents. Thank you.
So I went into the officials guidebook And since Scott's logged in here, we can find that under, right here is where we find the officials guidebook. I know Bruce put out an email, where's Bruce? There it is. Last week and a half ago, maybe, about the officials guidebook, a lot of information in there. Pretty much everything we need to know is in there as how we need to be as officials, what's expected of us. So I would encourage you to dive into that. I'm gonna touch on a few things that I dug out of here to get ready for this presentation. But I did want to show you where that's at as well, since we have it up. And I got way too many tabs going on.
One more.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say one more tab to the left is back to your presentation, so.
I don't need that.
Okay,
This is what I was looking.
okay.
So all that information on that first page that we were talking about, all of that information can be found in the officials guidebook. And it's starting here. I just went out and dug into it a little bit. Starts at page 22 if you want to make reference to it. It talks about our rating scores. And I'm thinking this is what you wanted me to touch on, Bruce. So again, 1 is below standard, 5 is superior, and I'll just leave that there for a minute or two and I'll let you read through that real quick as far as what they are, how they identify each one of these. Did everybody read that okay? Yes, good. And then, you know, I think the other big piece of this, I kind of highlighted the items in yellow here. I think the other big piece that we all want to know about is how are we being, what areas are they rating us on? And right here are the 4 categories in which they're rated: attitude and effort, presence and demeanor, administration and communication, judgment. Okay, and you'll get a rating 1 through 5 on those areas. But then as you dive into this a little bit more, you'll notice that each one of these areas of ratings carry some meaning to it, and they have some subcategories to them. Again, I highlighted it for you. My intent is not to go through this, more to point it out to you where it's at in the officials guidebook. I encourage you to dive into that, find that information, and read up on it.
Hey, Kevin, I would just say too, this is something that's been always in place is coaches rate us. We hope that coaches give themselves a 24-hour period of thinking it through because they know the ratings are important to us. For a rating is sent, it does clear through the athletic. So we're not advocating to get a rating necessarily, you wouldn't know where it came from anyway, but please know that the athletic directors are the clearinghouse for the rating system. I'm pretty good friends with an athletic director, and she has directed that up the best. I mean, she takes that very seriously. And I think most athletic directors do. And certainly from the administration of the association and we're closely with the signers. We're trying to make good communication because the athletic directors know how the grades impact our.
And there is a checklist out on the MHSA's website. This is what it looks like. I went out, I found it. This is the checklist we need to go through to make sure that you are postseason eligible if you are planning to work postseason. Review the sport-specific requirements, again, found in the officials guidebook. And I pulled that page out as well, somewhere specific. Yeah. And that is on page 25. Yes, and our tournament, everything needs to be submitted by 1/5 for postseason eligibility. Correction, page 26 is actually where you get into the sports specific for postseason tournament. For basketball, general requirements, remember you gotta work at least 10 contests for the season. And depending what gender you're working, you need to have 6 as a minimum to qualify for that postseason gender. So 10 and 6 are kind of the key numbers there. And then obviously you gotta have your ratings.
So actually, we say 12 is match 6 and 6.
If you want to, that's a good way of thinking about it, Bill. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. 6 and 6 if you want to work both genders. That was well put, yeah. And remember, you gotta have your ratings, you have to meet rating requirements to be able to qualify for postseason. Let's just go through this real quick. To be eligible, we got to attend the rules meeting that we just talked about. The 10 don't do that. The 10 contests, or as Bill put it, 6 and 6 if you want to do both genders. We have got to have at least 16 ratings over the, sorry, don't have much of a noise. Compiled 16 ratings over the last 3 years. Again, we need to be a member in good standing with the local association that Bruce already touched on. For district and regionals, we have to have a 2.7 rating or better. So remember, the rating system's got flipped, so now it's got to be 2.7 or higher to work districts over 3 years. That's districts and regionals. Quarterfinals need to be a 3.0 or better rating, and you have to have had to pass your exam 80% or better to work for that at that level. And then for your to work a final, you're looking at a 3.5 or better. And again, you still have to pass the written exam with 80% or better.
And the same for semi.
I'm sorry, John?
And the same for semi as well.
Well, quarters and semis was 3.0 or better with the written exam at 80%, and then your final is 3.5 or better with 80% on the written.
Okay, it's $25 fine. With the MHSA about working in private, which means working a high school game or so yeah, so I mean think that MHSAA and Brent Rice is getting his arms around turning an assignment. I know the first one was, there's always this officials working tournament games that didn't actually turn in the schedule. And I know that was kind of the first line in the sand. It's like, when you didn't turn your schedule, then you're not getting assigned. It's not gonna. And so, so he's been, obviously, he's increasingly ratcheting up the accountability to be able to.
Thank you. Did everybody hear that? Was everybody able to hear Bruce on that? Okay. And since I was here in the guidebook, and we are talking basketball, also in the officials guidebook is where you find the state adopted rules. And as of right now, we only have two. We have the running clock, or as they refer to it, the point differential rule, and the coaching box. So just as a refresher, the point differential rule for high school contest is 40 points or more. I cannot tell you how many different stories I hear from tables of when you go to a game. Well, the officials before us told it's 39 or more, or 35. I mean, I've heard so many different stories, and it's like, we need to know this, okay? 40 points or more to get to a running clock. Once they get to that 40 points, the clock continues to run. It can only happen in the second half. So if you got 45 points in the first half, that clock is still a normal clock until we get to the second half. Once we're at 40 though, if it's 40 at the start of the half, as soon as that ball goes in play, that clock is running. It will revert back to a normal game clock when it becomes 30 points or less. 30 points or less. Okay. If we are in that running clock mode, please remember that it stops for quarters, it stops for timeouts, it stops for injuries, and it will stop for the last 2 minutes of free throws. So once you get to the 2 minute mark and below, if they're shooting free throws, you revert back to a normal clock until that free throw ends. Once that free throw ends, that clock starts ticking again. They just don't want that clock running during the free throw scenario of the last 2 minutes. You might get down to the end of the game. I don't know, maybe somebody's going for some record or something, whatever. But just keep that in mind, please. Okay? Any questions on that, on the point differential? Everybody clear on that question?
So when the clock is running, do we stop the hand signals?
Absolutely not. Hand signals remain the same. And we're going to get into, I'm going to touch a little bit on mechanics because it's a POE for us. But please remember that mechanics are nonverbal communication for everybody in the gym to see. Coaches know what's going on with the hand signals. The table knows what's going on. Your partners know. So no, do not stop using proper mechanics just because you're in a running clock situation. Any?
It says in there can be modified for the junior high and middle school levels. How have they modified it? Or do they?
That will be based on every league can do their own thing. So if you're going to, thank you, that's a good point. So if you're going to work lower level contest below high school, middle school, junior high, that might be something you're gonna want to have that conversation with, get your coaches together, try and get it from the AD, if you have an AD there that greets you at that level. Ask them if there's any special rules for a running clock situation, point differential rule. Some have, some will just say, we're just using standard MHSA rules. Others have modified it to like 25 points. So that's something you're gonna want to check with prior to the game. Coaching box, sorry.
The guidebook doesn't say anything about injuries, but injuries will stop.
Yes. Yes. So right here, during any running clock mode, the clock shall be stopped as normal for all timeouts and in between quarters and free throws during the last 2 minutes of the game. And if you have an injury, that is to be deemed as a timeout, an injury timeout. It's our timeout. It's our timeout. But if somebody's hurt, we're not gonna let the clock just evaporate away. Okay. Yeah, right. Right. Anything else? Point differential. All right, and the last adoption that they have in the guidebook is, please remember the coaching box. 28-foot line to the end line. That's their box. Start in it, use it, don't abuse it. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. Questions on that? All right, so back to this tournament eligibility checklist. We've already talked about the sport specifics. We talked about making yourself available. Scott showed us where we can find that, how to make yourself available for tournament dates. The rules meetings, we've already talked about that. Make sure you do both of them. If you're a one sport only, if you're only doing basketball, make sure you do both of them. Exam, 80% or better is ideal if you plan on going deep into the postseason. MIGs. You want to talk about MIGs a little bit?
Member good standing, meeting the training qualification, training requirements, association. Determined by supervisor, so that is 50% of meetings and or equivalent scrimmage, whatever you guys did for last week. MSSA, I believe it started this year, sort of wiped everyone as member good standing from this, so if you're like me, for example, I'm one sport official, like when I log in, I don't have member good standing yet. Right, because I haven't completed the training requirements. So I get that. It's probably the number one question I get in email and say, Bruce, I'm not a member of standing. And typically my response is, as soon as you've met the training and membership requirements, we will make you. And really what that is 2 columns on the association administrative site. Every official that we have is registered for sport and literally like uses over arrow to move people from left column to the right column, from the right column to the right. That's when it shows up on your individual site.
I have junior high games on Wednesday, so I can't go to the meeting. Is there any special dispensation for me not being able to still get some credit because I'm not able to attend? Okay.
Very important though, make sure you are a member in good standing, just because if you are not a member in good standing, you will be disqualified from doing postseason. And we had some of those happen last year.
We did. We tried to be better at that. I think Tom really did a great job. Once, training is over, I'm encouraging Tom to send an email out to Scott and say, hey, look, member of good standings are upstated, your responsibility to log in, not being, just administrative error, right? We want to correct that before they start considering.
Scott?
The flow chart for member of good standing is pretty simple here. Tom Arnold is our director of training. So Tom is working through Tom Lenius, who is our secretary, to make sure that everyone is where they need to be when it comes to mix. Any questions or concerns with mix, start with Tom Arnold. You can always come to me. Send it to Tom. So Tom is part of Tom's umbrella responsibility for member of good standing. That's part of it. So I'm going to send it to him. I'm more than happy to try to fill in any blanks. But it's ultimately going to go to him. And then as we flow through these meetings, any questions with mix then still go through him. I think we have a Tom Lenius. Get on the MHSA website. Make sure our member good standing is 100% active. Do not wait till the last minute on this. Let's make sure that we're Johnny on the spot with this. And it's going to go to Tom.
And a good example, Scott, is I'll use John. John actually contacted me today and was proactive because he was looking through his records and he didn't. What was it, John? You didn't see that you had mixed standing. You weren't in good. Correct, right? So obviously that sent up red flags for John with not being a member in good standing. Now, it resets every year as far as becoming a member in good standing with TCAOA in the sport of basketball, right? And that's why we have the minimum 3 training meeting requirement, so that's our method of having you be a member in good standing. Again, along with paying your dues. So if you pay your dues and at the end of the training sessions, you've attended at least 3, then we report that to Tom Lenius, who then goes to the state. So, to Scott's point, at this particular point in the year, if you show no record of being a member in good standing up to this point, it's not necessarily a training issue, and I have no problem kind of forwarding your issue onto Tom Lenius to see from a historical perspective what your standing has been with the association.
And not to beat this up, I just go quickly. The MHSA language is this. They want every official to be a member of an association, right? Now, I'm assuming all the people in this room, we hope we provide enough value that you're a member of our association. In order to receive an assignment like Scott and his staff does not have to assign an official a contest if you are not a member of any association. So there's an official out there because I'm not joining anybody, I don't want to pay the money. Assigners are not required to assign that, right? But we would never say, Scott would never say, well, if you're a member of Association A, or you're not a member of the Tri-City, that's the reason I'm not giving you an assignment. That would never happen. That is proven. Right? So again, the value of being a member of the standing association principally tied to being able to work.
Hey, Bruce, if you remember this thing in one sport.
No.
Sports.
Sports specific.
Obviously, basketball, no one's going to be the standing.
Yeah, nobody's in the standing.
Thank you.
We're not going to let anybody slip through cracks. So any conversations that need to be run off, schedules good. Schedules, good way. We want work. So please know that we're obviously going to work.
All right, and then last but not least for postseason, remember, you have to submit your season schedule. And again, the deadline on all of this is January 5th is the deadline they have set. All right, rules changes. We really don't have a lot. This first one we're looking at, 214. This goes in for next year. The shot clock, and that would have to be state adopted. I don't know if that's gonna happen or not at this point. So that's about the extent of my discussion on that. Head coverings. They've made some changes. So if we have players that are wearing head coverings for religious purposes, as long as they are not hard or abrasive, we do not need to have a medical slip for that purpose. No questions asked. They're there. They can wear them. They can have them on as long as they fit tightly. They're not secured by pins. Leave it be. Let it go. Do your thing. Okay. If we have a device, a head covering in which is not for religious purposes, but is for medical purposes. If that is the case, that device needs to have a written slip from the MHSAA prior to that game. You need a doctor's slip, doctor prescription for that player to be using that device. And even if there is a medical slip, I guess I would raise the question. If it's hard and abrasive, I don't know that we're still going to allow that to fly. Thoughts?
So you're saying, okay, so first game of the season, player A has that particular situation. Coach is going to use a letter from the MHSA clearly next to that.
Well, yeah, I get, but I'm going off of what this is reading, Bruce. So in here, I gotta find it again.
Well, I think this falls in the category of two of this. Every game before this, they let her wear that. What's wrong with you guys? Right? So Scott, I mean, required to take meetings, I think that would be, we might want to just ping that on our directors. Having coaches communicate that, because it's gonna.
I have an email going out to my athletic director tomorrow, so I will have that.
But I would say this to the point, either crew that enforces. Either crew that enforces. Game one.
And now that I made that statement, I would say this. If the MHSAA has signed off on that, and they are able to produce, the coaches are able to produce a medical slip that has MHSAA authorization to use it, use it. And if you as an official feel that perhaps it is too hard, it is too abrasive, I would still allow them to use it for that game because they do have written permission. And I would take your concern directly to Scott and let him know the circumstances as to what your concerns are. And he can take it up with the state at that point. Yeah.
How do we know it's a legal document? Signed by the commission. Is there a certain one that state puts out?
You think so?
I don't think anybody's asking.
Listen, quite honestly, I've been officiating for 30+ years, and I don't know, Ed. I cannot remember of a single game where I have had a coach walk up to me with a piece of paper saying, my player needs to wear this because, okay? I don't want to beat this up. It is part of new rules. take it for what it's worth. If you have a piece of paper with a doctor's signature on it or coming from the MHSAA that says this is legal, play on.
Back to, I mean, last year homeschool, star athlete, at home, white uniform, non-medical, black meat, dark, just show, nothing to protect. Probably the 15th game of the season, right? And, they got argument, they got, it's.
We all have a job to do. Let it start on game one. Take care of it early, and you're helping everybody in this room and everybody that comes after you. Just take care of it. All right, signals. They took away the team control mechanic out of the book this year. So last year, if we had a team control foul, it would have been foul, team control. This is no longer valid. This is gone. So it is now, we're just back to a player control, hand up, behind the head, white ball, and a signal to where the ball's coming inbound. So this represents both team control and player control. Everybody good on that? Henry?
Okay, you got a guy guarding, A's guarding B and C, offensive, like a illegal screen, right? You're gonna punch that, right? Player control, team control. Are you gonna point to C? Just for clarification, because the guy with the ball, he's going around the guy, and you're thinking the coach is saying, that was good.
You're talking like the old bird dog?
Just so clarification, so coach knows it's on the pick, it's on the screen.
If you're asking me what I'm going to do,
Yeah,
I personally am not going to bird dog. I will probably come up with this. I'm coming this way, and I may finish from here with block, blue 34, block, white ball on the end line.
You need some clarification.
And that's okay. You can be verbal with it. You can be verbal with it, but just remember, this is gone, rule change, this is gone. This is replaced with this, team control, player control. Everybody good?
Is that how you report to the table too, when you go over there, same thing with both signals that and block at the table?
I am taking it to the table. White, 23, team control, block, white ball. Brendan, do you have? Everybody good? All right, this is going to be a lot of information. I don't know if I'm going to get through all this. Points of emphasis for this year. We've already talked about a little bit. So I mentioned it earlier. Remember, the mechanics that we have in place are nonverbal communication. They allow us non-verbally to talk with everybody in the place. Anybody that knows anything about basketball will know what, if you do your mechanics properly, most everybody that knows anything about basketball is going to know what the signals mean. It is our way of communicating with everybody in the gym. And that becomes really, really important when you're working in a full house and your voice is doing absolutely nothing because nobody's hearing you. The only thing we have to rely on are our mechanics. Get into the book, know what they are, use Federation mechanics. And I believe Tom is doing
Yep.
So
Zoom meeting.
I'm really not gonna dive into it a whole lot. He's gonna cover the mechanics side of officiating, but it's a point of emphasis, right? We don't need, how many times do we see, we got a foul, right? Oh, what the hell is that? I've never seen that one before, right? Oh, what is that? Go with what's in the book. Boom, 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 contact. I don't care if it's here, you still got contact. Right? Contact while shooting. Hit them in the head. This is not a mechanic. It's not a mechanic. Don't use it. Okay? Make sure the mechanics are good mechanics. How do we stop a clock? We have two ways of stopping it, right? We're either going to be open hand if we have a violation that's taken place, or we're going to be closing for a foul. Right? If we have a open hand violation, maybe it's a held ball. Whistle, hand, step in, good mechanics. Double thumbs. I don't know what else I've seen. I've seen all kinds with. Okay. Whoops, that wasn't playing.
What was that?
Keys. Open hand, travel, right? White ball on the sideline. That needs to take place every time. Every time. Timeout administrations. When can a timeout be called? Speak up. I can't hear you. Speak up.
The head coach requested that they have control of the ball.
Okay. So that's during the live ball situation, right? So if we're talking live ball situation, what are the requirements to grant a timeout? And who can call it? You touched on one. Coaches can call it during the live ball situation, right? Who else can call it? A player. Is that who was saying that? Must be in possession. So who is classified as a player? Any player on the floor. Therefore, it cannot be a player on the bench. Right? One of the five on the floor is a player. And yes, they have to be in possession of the ball. Just because a coach is asking for a timeout does not mean they get it. It has to be granted. If our attention is elsewhere, yes, I might have my ears open, but before I grant that timeout, are you granting it based on here? Timeout, you got a coach right behind you. Timeout, are you gonna grant that? Maybe. Maybe. If you know that voice specifically, and you know for a fact it's the coach, and we all know there are some coaches out there, they're very distinctive, aren't they? They are very distinctive. If you have that on the back side of you, timeout, and you see they are in possession, I will grant that. If I have that quiet as a mouse coach behind me that hardly says boo throughout the entire game, asking for a timeout, and I really don't know that voice, probably not granting that one. I might hear it, but I don't recognize the voice. So now I need to physically take a look at that coach to indeed know that they are requesting that timeout. look, I'm gonna come back. They still have to have possession of the ball. If that ball's gone, are we granting that? I want to hear some thoughts on that.
You'd have to sell the point that it was called, what was possession, and it just took you a couple of seconds to process that it was what was called. You'd have to sell it.
How are you going to sell it?
By saying I turned and looked to confirm what I thought I heard, and I looked back at the ball was no longer in possession, but at the time I requested it, it was in possession.
And I'm okay with it. I am okay with that. If you think you hear timeout, they have possession, you look, and indeed the coach is over there giving you a timeout on the backside of you. I want a timeout or verbally timeout. I will put air in my whistle at that point. I will grant that. And to your point, Jeff, yes, I can sell that to the other coach. I acknowledge the timeout. I need to verify it was the coach was calling the timeout. Possession was there when I heard it. I just verified it. I am granting that timeout. I would give you the same courtesy. Okay. The bigger point of this is I'm going to pick on the girls because this is mostly when it happened. Loose ball on the floor. Balls all over the place. People are in there trying to get a loose ball. Nobody's really got possession of it. Somebody's sitting on the floor and the ball's laying between their legs, but they don't really have possession of it. Coaches over there yelling, timeout, timeout, timeout. Don't grant it. Nobody's got possession. You know, or we got player A and player B. Both have possession of that ball. And they're wanting a timeout. Don't give them the timeout. Give them the help ball. They didn't have possession. Don't reward them for that. A lot of people, a lot of officials will have early whistles in those circumstances to prevent the rough play that follows that. Balls all over the place, bodies are flying all over the floor, nobody's got possession of it. And then what happens? Then it becomes a football game, right? And that's why officials want to get in there and they want to give an early whistle for a held ball. Don't grant it. Don't grant that timeout. Penalize the foul. If indeed that's what's happening, penalize the foul. Don't grant the timeout. And that's the point they're really making out of that whole thing.
Hey, Kevin,
Yes.
I can't figure what timeouts are. It's usually not always on the table side. Coach, hey Kevin, this or this happens, I want a timeout. Right?
And you want me to respond to that? So when I'm in front of that coach and they tell me exactly what Bruce says, I'll look over my shoulder and I'll say, remind me when the ball goes through the hoop. I am not calling that timeout for you. When you want that timeout, you tell me again and I will grant it at that point. But I'm not calling timeout for you just because the ball went through the basket. We have been burned by that. Have we not, Bruce? So be careful with it.
Yeah, one second.
Go ahead.
I know on the bottom it says the request may be oral and visual. As far as I'm concerned, I think most of us would like to see this and to see the verbal and to hear the verbal, just so that, you know, when you're running down court, you can kind of see it, you're doing this, but when he's yelling, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of confusion.
So So to that point, I would ask everybody to incorporate timeouts into their pregame through the coaches' meeting. It's one of those things, because remember, can an assistant coach call a timeout?
No. Yeah, but you don't have to grab it. I mean, you don't grab it.
We're not supposed to. Now, I guarantee you, I'm not even gonna ask for a show of hands, because how many times do assistant coaches come running down, timeout, timeout, timeout? I've seen it. We grant a timeout because an assistant coach is asking for it. You don't have a right to ask for a timeout. Timeouts come from the head coach, or they come from a player on the floor. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts. So to your point, make that part of your pregame. Coach, when you want a timeout, verbalize it and try and signal it for me, if you would, please, to help us. Jeff.
Also, a pet peeve of mine is coaches that do not break the huddle prior to the second horn. I make 100% of my pregame telling them that they must be on the floor ready to play at the second horn. I do not start that timeout until both teams are settled in, so they are not going to get cheated out of any of their timeout time. But I do not want them to take an extra 8 or 10 seconds after the second horn to get ready to play.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to dive into that subject, but what I will say is we have tools in place to take care of that. Use the tools that are available to you to deal with that issue. Okay?
So Kevin, just real quick on that pregame timeout. One of the added thing that's always helpful that I like to tell coaches, and let me know if it's a full or
Yeah.
I don't hear from you.
Nope. Nope. Good point, John. Thank you. Unsporting conduct.
Back to full timeouts and half timeouts.
What's the question?
Last year, the protocol with COVID was that all timeouts were 60-second timeouts. Are we back to normal timeout mechanics in regards to 30-second timeouts? And
as of right now, nothing has come out of the MHSAA regarding COVID protocols. And to the best of my knowledge, we are back to normal basketball, following federation mechanics.
Okay. And unless otherwise.
Unless something comes out from MHSAA telling us we're doing something different because of COVID protocols.
I was curious about that, and I was curious about that.
Everything's back to normal.
As far as
absolutely. Unsporting conduct. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to finish on that. Again, remember, everything we're talking about right now are POEs, point of emphasis. Okay. Illegal screens, obviously a big issue. So all I can really say is encourage you guys to get into the rule book and understand screens. Legal and illegal. Okay. Let's just buzz through this real quick. Legal screening when a player who is, I'm just going to read it for what it is. Screening is legal action to delay a player while touching the floor without causing contact to prevent an opponent from reaching the desired position. Legal screening is when the player who is screening an opponent is stationary, has both feet on the floor when contact occurs, time and distance are relevant. The screener shall be stationary except when both the screener and opponent are moving in the same path in the same direction. Pretty clear. Yes? Now, if you want to get into the actual rule itself, hit the rule book.
Kev, you've got 6 minutes. Just
Get it? All right. Oh, God. I got a lot to go. All right, enough on screening. Point of emphasis, get in the rule book. I'll leave it at that. Euro step, spin moves, jump stops, legal or illegal. This document is out on the Federation website. NHF, National High School.
NFHS.
NFHS. NFHS. There you go. You can find this document out there. I would suggest reading through it. Good material to read through. Traveling. What we can do with our feet, what we cannot do with our feet. The biggest problem I would say with traveling for most officials, we do a very poor job on finding the pivot foot. Locating the pivot foot itself. Because pretty much once the pivot foot is established, I think traveling becomes pretty easy. The problem is finding the initial pivot foot. And we really got to work hard at locating that pivot foot. Again, good information out there on the website regarding all this stuff, the Euro steps, the jump stops, the spin moves. We're not doing a very good job at it. Not doing a very good job with traveling as a whole, quite honestly. And I know Tom wants me to talk about this, and I don't know why, but we're going to talk about it. Unsporting conduct. We are all responsible for unsporting behavior. It starts from the moment we walk in the door. We need to find our athletic directors or whoever's greeting us at the door. We need to find out who game management is for that game. We need to know where they are going to be sitting for that game. We are asking them as part of our pregame conference with administrators, game administrators, is crowd behavior. Get to it before we bring it to you. That's their job. We all have a job to do. That's one of their jobs. That's what the MHSA expects of our game managers. Okay, to take care of that before we bring it to their attention. If game management fails to deal with that behavior, there is nothing wrong with we as an official to locate the game management for that game and bring the situation to their attention. If they're not paying attention to it, then we can do that, and we should do that. Do not, when it comes to fan behavior, be very, very careful how you deal with it. And I strongly recommend that you give game management first opportunity to deal with it. Now, that's not to say that you may have that occasional fan that might say some magical words that might get them their walking papers. But with that said, it should not be as an official, it's not a point at the fan and a toss. It's airing the whistle to the table. I need game management right now. They know how to get hold of them. They'll ring them up on the phone. They'll do it over the PA. They'll get them. That game is not going anywhere until that fan is escorted out of the gymnasium by game management. It's not our job. Okay? Let game management do what they're supposed to do.
The only thing I would add is two things. One is I would encourage enforcement of unsporting behavior at all levels. A lot of the stuff that, you know, frankly becomes an association issue happens at the junior high level. You know, association, and I'm speaking for the supervisors, is if you're the senior official, you're working with the younger official. Our expectation from the association standpoint is the senior official steps in and handles that situation. Every time. We have too many young officials that are put in way bad positions. Sometimes I hear the senior guy didn't do anything about it, or the senior female official didn't do anything about it. Please help the young officials in, because it can get nasty at the junior high level. Everybody knows that. The other thing that I would say is, not to beat this too much, the association will have your back in a very egregious, use one of Tom Barker's fancy word, egregious situation. We have one happening right now, where we had a football crew, verbally assaulted, so to speak, by a senior leadership position in the school district, making a federal case out of it. Just school board, not letting it go, not letting unsporting behavior just get swept under the rug as oh gee, no way. We're working too hard to improve and train officials for that garbage to happen. Truly bad.
Scott?
Yes, any of these issues that will come up, and they will come up this year for many of us. I need to know immediately. And I know I've got Phillips and Jason and Jessica and my staff. I need to know. I need to know immediately whether it's a fan issue, a player issue, coach issue, whatever issue it is, so I can take care of that immediately. And on Bruce's point about senior officials working with newer officials, I'll take that a step further and say my expectation is when you're going into that game, preferably probably a junior high game, I want you to make both coaches and game management aware that I'm a senior official tonight and it's flowing from me tonight. Because this official is new and they're going to make mistakes. I'm here to help them, but any and all communication is coming from me. It's not coming to them. So there's several of you in this room, and I see several of you are working with younger officials. That's my expectation. Pretty clear, it's concise, but any unsporting issues with any fans, players, coaches, nip it in the bud on the court as soon as possible, and give it to me as soon as possible. I need to follow up and make sure that Bruce is correct. 100% support from our group. We're losing too many officials.
I had something like that happen that I was a senior official at a junior high game. It was, I think, 2, maybe 3 years ago. I tried to get a hold of AD that night. He was already gone. I got immediately a hold of Jason, and I got nothing, but I had never had this happen before. But I didn't want this new kind of new official who's running without, which is a very senior couple female officials, just to go away. And I said, you cannot, I sat her aside and said, you cannot let this go. I will help you get through this. This is the steps that we're going to take. And our association was awesome. Even the Michigan High School Athletic Association was happening on Wednesday night. I guess if I needed to do a report, I've never done it before. They did. By Friday afternoon, I personally got a call from the Michigan High School Athletic Association saying that an assistant coach would never ever be allowed to coach again in capacity. I was impressed with how fast everything went. On the back and that I got from what I knew, because I never had that happen before, and followed through the whole process of submitting out the report I needed to spend. So when you said the association has your back. They have your back. That's important.
And I would ditto that, very much so.
We have to follow reports of the state. We check with, does the association get a copy of that?
Any reports, whether they're, we do reports for many reasons, right? This example about Unsporting Conduct, yes, just make a copy and paste it to me as well. I don't necessarily get them, so that helps me fill in the blanks as well as ever, backwards, so to speak. So yeah, all communication that you can give me, if anything goes, sideways with this topic, yeah, please forward to me. We'll work together to make sure.
What happens if we get to a venue that doesn't have a game manager, or doesn't have that person? Who would be like the default, go-to in the event of, unruly parent, fan, coach?
Unfortunately, hopefully, the home school should have game management there. And if there is no game management there, your next default is the head coach of the home team. Now, at the high school level, that is very, very rare that happens. If that's going to happen, that would happen more or less at your junior high, middle school level.
Or a subclass, in a lot of cases, a freshman ball game or something that's happening in an October gym or something like that, you may not have that person available, so I'm just curious.
The other thing too is if you're doing a sub-varsity game, freshman JV, I would put that on the varsity head coach. There's no one else around, right? If there's no AD or AD's assistant or whoever, and familiarize yourself ahead of time with who the varsity head coach is. Okay, especially if you're doing JV, the likelihood that the varsity head coach is going to be in that gym from beginning to end of that game is very high. So that is another option for you as well. But to Kevin's point, I can count, I think on one hand, how many times in my officiating career I've walked into the gym and there's been no game management where I've had to default to whoever the home head coach is.
No, me too.
Sure.
I was curious if they systemize this, because it sounds like this is kind of a point of emphasis this year, which I'm really glad it is.
Sure.
But I just didn't know if this is going to the ADs and stuff like that, so that they can develop some kind of procedure, as a standard procedure, coming down from it.
Sure.
And also, can I ask, say we referee a couple contests, same school, same group, and we're noticing a pattern that they never show up. Should we forward that to like somebody else?
You're saying game management is chronically absent?
We're starting to notice a pattern that, man, whenever we're here or there, there's never anybody.
Absolutely.
We all have bosses. If you don't like something that's happening at one of your contests, you have a boss that you can bounce all those things off of. That is the first place you go to. If you are uncomfortable with something that's happening, you take it to your boss, your assigner. Scott?
I know we're over time, but I would
We
say
are.
collectively, game management, athletic directors in our area and our relationship we have with them, top notch. The school we're in right now, Mike there is in the Hall of Fame. All right, he's not the only one that we deal with, who appreciates what we do and knows how hard we work at spread. So, no going in that we have the support. I mean, stuff can happen, right? The athletic directors that we service, the officials in our wide swath of geographic area support us 100%. So, we have that security blanket to a point, so keep that in mind as well. So that's important. So.
All right, I'm gonna bring it back. I want to get through what we got, like 4 items here and then I'll wrap this up. All right. So officials should not tolerate inappropriate conduct from coaches and or players. The rules allow for a warning to be given to coaches and it should be utilized when appropriate. Coaches just at the top of their lungs in an empty facility, screaming for a call or screaming at a no call or whatever it is. We need to de-escalate that immediately. And I think Tom is going to be hitting
Wednesday.
on that really, really hard on Wednesday, correct?
Yep.
But do not allow that behavior to continue. Get in there, defuse it, bring it down, and have that conversation at a calm level. Okay? That is the number one thing we have to do. The team huddle is not a safe haven for coaches in bad language. Just as a classroom teacher should not verbally abuse students, neither should coaches use bad language when addressing their players. How many times have we been around a huddle or near a huddle? How many times have we heard all kinds of cuss words coming out of those huddles directed at their players? I'm pretty passionate about this, guys and gals. High school sports is an extension of the classroom. I work in a high school, I live it, I breathe it, and I'm here to tell you the behavior that we, and I say we, allow these coaches to behave the way they behave would not be accepted in any one classroom. The language, the animations, the anger, none of it would be allowed in a classroom. And as a parent, you would not allow it in a classroom if your student was being talked to in that manner, swore at, angered at. You know what I'm saying? It's an extension of the classroom. We need to deal with it. Please do. Same thing with players. We would not expect our players to pipe off to their teachers in a classroom. We should not expect those players to come back at us because they did something wrong. All right, it's that simple. But again, we need to remain calm. We need to be the de-escalators. We need to bring those tensions down. The same holds true the other way. We are not exempt from it either. We are expected to behave a certain way. We are the neutral party out there. We are the ones that really are not supposed to care one way or another. We are the ones that are not supposed to be emotional. We are the ones that are supposed to bring it from here to here and keep it here. It's not easy. I understand that. And I'm not sure why Tom had me do this because I might be the worst. No, when it comes to trying to keep my cool sometimes. But if that type of behavior is out there, deal with it. Bring it down. Tom will talk more about that on Wednesday. Try and bring that situation down. My last point I will give you is pregame. This is another pregame discussion to have with your coaches. This is the expectation. This is the tone of voice. There will be no shout outs. We should not be allowing coaches to yell over my shoulder to get to somebody else. Stop it. Just turn around, bring it down, finish it. There's no shout outs tonight, coach. What's your message? Questions? I'm done. Question. Give me your scenario.
They rumble all up, I know. Or they didn't follow just belligerent disagreement. Terrible, disagreement.
Now, did you recommend you had players? Not us? I'm going to get you an assistant coach. This huddle is an extension of the classroom. Please help your coach. I'm gonna try and de-escalate it first.
So kind of like an informal warning.
Yes,
type of-
and at that point, I mean, that's all it is, it's an informal warning.
So you're not.
You're trying to get somebody part of that team, the assistant coach, to bring that down.
But that's not going to go to the table and be like a formal.
Not at that point, no.
Six and a half on
Now, if he sticks an F on there, you reckon that his kids?
And you see that in football, just about.
Oh, I'm probably coming. You know, now, here's the thing. Remember where our positions are on the floor. We are away from those huddles. So it's gonna have to be really, really loud for us to hear it based on our positioning on the floor, right? But at that 45-second mark, when I'm going into the huddle and trying to get them to break out of that huddle, and I might hear some, Jesus, God damn, you know, those types of words that directly at the kids. I'm gonna say something to the assistant. I may wait for the kids to break out of that, and I'm going to have a word with the coach myself. Coach, please remember your huddle is an extension of the classroom. It's real simple. I mean, that terminology right there will resonate with every teacher. It's an extension of the classroom. They have nowhere to go. They have nothing to say to that. If that behavior continues, then penalize it. Now, if there's an F-bomb in there, if I'm walking in and he's throwing F-bombs at his players, I'm gonna tee you. There ain't no warning. Okay? Anything else? Thank you. Sorry it took so long.
Yeah, you're fine. Wednesday, 6 o'clock at Standish, for those who can make it.
Drive safely.